Chapter 4891. It's mainly because my wife is powerful. She beat them to the point that they couldn't resist. When Yunju and I appeared later, we basically didn't have to do anything and they had already fled. Di Beichen's lips curled up slightly, revealing a mouthful of white teeth. His charming black eyes were full of pride. Are you kidding us? Di Xiaofeng and the other two stared at Di Beichen in a daze. They felt helpless in their hearts. Why didn't they notice that Di Beichen had the bad habit of showing off his love before? The pride between his eyebrows was obviously showing off that he had a good wife. What Beichen said is true. Mo Yunjue said quietly again. As soon as these words came out, the expressions of Di Xiaofeng and the others changed again. If it was only Di Beichen who said this, they would think that Di Beichen was joking because he was in a good mood. However, Mo Yunjue was different. According to their understanding, Mo Yunjue was a person who didn't joke. Since even he said so, could it be that all this was true? Are you sure? Lin Chanshan's eyes widened in disbelief. Then she looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and explained, Hongzhuang, I don't mean to look down on you, but isn't this too unbelievable? Did you really beat them up single-handedly? Lin Chanshan looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with burning eyes. Previously, she only knew that Bailey Hongzhuang's alchemy skills were extremely powerful, but she didn't have much expectation for her cultivation. Although she was very surprised that Bailey Hongzhuang could persist on the deck, according to the situation she learned, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation shouldn't be very high. In any case, with this cultivation, let alone dealing with Jun Lingxuan and the other two, it wouldn't be easy to deal with one person. It's not that exaggerated. I was also in danger before. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. It was the first time she saw Lin Chanshan like this and it was very interesting. Now I feel that you are Yi's biological sister. It turns out that your personalities are similar. When Yang Ming saw Lin Chanshan before, she had always been calm, which was in sharp contrast to Lin Yi's character. At that time, she had thought that the two sisters' personalities were poles apart, but now that she saw Lin Chanshan's current appearance, she felt that they were indeed sisters. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Lin Chanshan blushed and looked a little embarrassed. She then turned to Mo Yunjue and said, Yunjue, I didn't expect that even you would fall. When we arrived, Jun Zitao was indeed heavily injured and had no strength to fight back. If it wasn't for Jun Lingxuan using some underhanded tricks, Hongzhuang would have finished them off. Mo Yunjue looked indifferent. His cold face was like ice without any temperature. His voice was calm as he stated a fact. Seeing this, Lin Chanshan and the other two couldn't help but look at each other. They gradually began to accept this reality in their hearts. I'm afraid all this is not a joke. It's all true. Hongzhuang, I didn't expect your combat power to be so strong. I really underestimated you before. Lin Taxing stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. His handsome face was full of exclamation and surprise. He then turned to Di Beichen and said, Beichen, you are really lucky to marry a good wife. Di Xiaofeng chuckled, Taxing, then you have to follow this standard to find a wife in the future. Chapter 4892. Everyone was completely helpless. After their understanding, they realized that Di Beichen was really a wife-flaunting maniac. Pervert. Di Xiaofeng rolled his eyes and spat out two words. Di Beichen looked indifferent. After all, these people were still unmarried, so it was normal for them to be jealous of him. Just as Di Beichen and the others were talking, a voice suddenly sounded behind them. Di Beichen, did you guys meet my big sister? Xiao Sudong's eyes fell on Di Beichen's body. As early as when he saw a group of people sneaking around and talking, he felt that something was wrong. When he got closer, he heard the words about the Xiao family. He immediately connected all the dots in his mind. Xiao Sudong, we're not very familiar with you, so why should we tell you? Lin Chanshan's face was full of disgust. Even if they had a good relationship with Xiao Sudong before, now that both sides had completely fallen out, their previous friendship was naturally gone. What's more, during the alchemy competition, Xiao Sudong's attitude towards them was not polite at all. I'm asking Di Beichen. Xiao Sudong glanced coldly. I clearly heard you guys mention the Xiao family just now. Do you still want to deny it now? I'm saying that I felt unlucky to meet you guys on the way. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Lin Chanshan was not polite at all. She directly stepped forward, forcing Xiao Sudong to step back. After taking another step back, Xiao Sudong steadied his body and looked at Lin Chanshan with dissatisfaction. I see that you feel unlucky. Then why did you run over here? Everyone here is our people and they feel that you're an eyesore. Are you here to be beaten? The continuous questioning made Xiao Sudong speechless for a moment. As a man, he really couldn't win against this woman. After seeing Xiao Sudong's situation, the cultivators of the Jun family also came over. Young Master Xiao, what happened? The Jun family's disciples' eyes fell on Di Beichen and the others, with a hint of warning. Xiao Sudong was originally lacking in confidence, but after seeing the disciples of the Jun family, his confidence suddenly increased a lot. In fact, he was also quite depressed. There were many cultivators gathered in front of this building, but he was the only disciple of the Xiao clan. On the contrary, Di Beichen and the others had a total of 6 people. If they really fought, they wouldn't be a match for him. Fortunately, there were 3 cultivators from the Jun family. Although they were still less than the number of cultivators from the Di family, at least they had the ability to deal with the situation. I heard them mention my eldest sister and young Master Jun's names, and I wanted to ask them if they had met them. Xiao Sudong also had some doubts in his heart. Logically speaking, if his elder sister and Di Beichen and the others met, they would inevitably fight. Based on this situation, the winner should be Big Sister and the others. But if that was the case, Di Beichen and the others would not have come here unscathed. Hearing this, the eyes of the Jun family's disciples lit up. Their leader was Jun Lingxuan. They had not been able to find Jun Lingxuan, and they felt a little uneasy. Although most of the cultivators were still scattered, it was obvious that many people had gathered here. Chapter 48-93. Is this true? The gazes of the Jun family's disciples fell on Di Beichen and the others, revealing unfriendliness and suspicion. In my opinion, it should be fake, right? Jun Chenbin said slowly. If they really met, Ling Sun would have already dealt with them. Why would he let them appear here? Jun Chenbin's face was full of disdain. When he first heard the news, he was also a little surprised, but after thinking about it carefully, it was probably impossible. As Jun Chenbin's voice fell, Xiao Sudong also nodded. Actually, I think the same as you. It's definitely impossible for them to meet. As he spoke, Xiao Sudong no longer had his previous persistence. He only felt that perhaps it was because he wanted to know the whereabouts of his elder sister so much that he didn't even consider the most basic thing clearly. If they didn't meet, then just say that they didn't meet. Why do you have to pretend to be so mysterious? Xiao Sudong looked at Lin Chanshan with disdain and mocked. Xiao Sudong, don't be so proud. Lin Chanshan rolled her eyes. To tell you the truth, Beichen and the others not only met Xiao Sou, but also met Jun Lingxuan and Jun Shitao. Xiao Sudong and the others who were about to leave stopped after hearing Lin Chanshan's words and turned to stare at her. However, the result is not what you think. Lin Chanshan spread out her hands and shrugged. The ones who fled were not Beichen and the others, but Xiao Sou and the others. What kind of joke are you making? Xiao Sudong snorted coldly, his face full of sarcasm. If you made it up, I might believe it. Now you're saying that my elder sister and young Master Jun are no match for Di Beichen and the others? Ha, don't make a fool of yourself with such lies. Jun Chenbing also laughed. When Ling Sun appears later, your lies will be exposed. Wouldn't it be even more embarrassing? Looking at the expressions of Xiao Sudong and the others, Di Xiaofeng's face also darkened. At this time, Di Beichen's magnetic and flat voice sounded, I didn't expect that Xiao Sou would have such a treasure like the escape talisman. I really underestimated you. Xiao Sudong, who had been laughing extremely exaggeratedly, suddenly froze after hearing this. How did you know? The escape talisman was given to Xiao Sou by his father before they entered the immortal cloud mystic realm. The only people who knew about this were Xiao Sou and him. Other than them, no one else knew. Even the other disciples of the Xiao clan did not know about this matter. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Di Beichen to know. Could it be that what Di Beichen said was true? Xiao Sou crushed the escape talisman and left. Bailey Hongzhuang said calmly. Xiao Sudong looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, his mind full of thoughts. Before mentioning the escape talisman, he did not believe it at all. But now he had no choice but to believe it. He must have encountered it before. Because I think it must be the 3 of you who attacked my elder sister. That's why such a situation happened? Xiao Sudong's face turned ashen. I didn't expect you to be so despicable, bullying her with numbers. Chapter 48-94. My big sister isn't here right now, so you can say whatever you want. When my big sister appears, I'll see if you can continue to lie. Xiao Sudong's face was full of disbelief. Bailey Hongzhuang, don't think that you're so great after being in the limelight in the alchemy competition. Don't you feel embarrassed to blow your own trumpet like this? That's right, Miss Xiao and our Jun Lingxuan. Don't tell me our strength can't be compared to you people from the lower realm? It's simply a fantasy story. Jun Qinbin's face was full of disdain. He felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were too funny. Even if it was to show off their own ability, they shouldn't have made up such a flawed lie. I'm blowing my own trumpet? Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. It's up to you to believe it or not, but you should recognize this thing, right? As her voice fell, Bailey Hongzhuang directly took out a storage ring. What storage ring? Xiao Sudong frowned. I've never seen it before. However, when Jun Qinbin saw the storage ring, his face suddenly changed, and a deep shock appeared in his eyes. They were no stranger to this storage ring. This was clearly Jun Zitao's storage ring. Although storage rings looked similar, they grew up with Jun Zitao since they were young, so they were very familiar with his storage ring. How can Zitao's storage ring be with you? Jun Qinbin's face was full of horror. He knew very well that a cultivator's storage ring couldn't appear in other places. Once it appeared in other places, there was only one possibility: he was dead. Jun Zitao was dead? When this thought appeared in the minds of the Jun family's disciples, they all felt that it was simply impossible. In any case, Jun Zitao couldn't be dead. What's more, they encountered Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. Could it be that the combined strength of the three of them was stronger than Jun Lingxuan and the other two? After hearing this, Xiao Sudong couldn't help but be stunned. What did you say? This is Zitao's storage ring? Why are you here? Don't you already know? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and asked. Impossible. Jun Qinbin said firmly. This is absolutely impossible. Believe it or not. Di Beichen looked coldly at Jun Qinbin. We don't have time to deal with you. Do as you please. With that, Di Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang to the other side. It's useless to talk to them. In any case, they have already decided in their hearts. In the end, when Jun Lingxuan and the others appeared, these guys naturally knew. Di Xiaofeng and the others also followed after seeing Di Beichen's actions. However, Jun Qinbin and the others did not give up and followed closely behind. Di Beichen, explain yourself. Di Beichen looked at the angry Jun Qinbin in front of him, and a trace of coldness appeared on his beautiful face. Do you want to fight? If you want to fight, we'll accompany you to the end. Her calm words didn't contain any emotions, but when they fell into the ears of Jun Qinbin and the others, they were filled with killing intent. Obviously, if they dared to continue questioning, Di Beichen wouldn't mind killing them personally. Seeing this, Xiao Sudong couldn't help but say, Jun Qinbin, why don't we go back first? Maybe after a while, elder sister and the others will appear. Chapter 4895. After Xiao Sudong and the others left, Di Xiaofeng could not help but sigh. These guys really won't shed tears until they see the coffin. They'll understand sooner or later. If it weren't for the fact that there are too many cultivators gathered here, I would have taken care of them directly. Lin Taxing's eyes were filled with disgust. He really did not have a good impression of these guys. Di Beichen nodded slightly. He also noticed that there were many cultivators gathered around. While they were arguing, the surrounding gazes were all fixed on them. Presumably, everyone was itching for them to fight so that they could reap the benefits of the third party. By the way, big brother, why are so many of you gathered here? Di Beichen's deep and charming eyes revealed a contemplative light. For this point, Di Beichen had always been somewhat unable to understand. Logically speaking, it was impossible for all the cultivators who entered the Immortal Cloud secret realm to gather in the same place since they could not tell the direction. However, when they arrived, there were dozens of cultivators gathered here. It was simply unbelievable. We were also attracted by the light that appeared in the ruins. Di Xiaofeng slowly said. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally understood that the ruins would flash with a dazzling white light every 4 hours, attracting all the surrounding cultivators. Di Beichen and the others had come here because they had seen this dazzling light. When I first arrived, there weren't so many cultivators. However, this building has attracted more and more people recently. Emperor Xiaofeng revealed a helpless expression. I was hoping to enter this building to find some treasures while no one else knew about it. I didn't expect that even though more and more people have come, I still haven't found a way to enter. Can't find a way to enter? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Is it because the door can't be opened? That's right. Lin Qianqian nodded. This building is really too strange. Although there's a door, I can't find a mechanism no matter how hard I search. Look, there are many people fumbling around over there. However, we've searched the entire area and couldn't find any mechanism at all. Not only that, we tried to break through the door, but no matter how we attacked, it was useless. The defensive power of this door is too strong. It's not something we can break through with our strength. Lin Taxing sighed helplessly. After being in the immortal cloud mystic realm for so long, he had not gained anything. His only hope lay in this building. Who would have thought that he would not be able to enter it? Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at the entrance of the building. As expected, many cultivators were looking around trying to find a way in. Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. Their minds were filled with thoughts of that rock. Perhaps that rock was the way to enter. Sensing their gazes, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head quietly. I keep feeling that this place is a little strange. It seems to be different from what I thought before. Although she had come here based on the stone's reaction, after seeing this building, she had a strange feeling in her heart. Chapter 4896. What's the difference? Di Beichen wrinkled his beautiful eyebrows and asked. For Bailey Hongzhuang's intuition, he had always believed in it. Since Hongzhuang had such an idea, there must be something else going on behind the scenes. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. I don't know what the problem is, but give me some time and I'll figure it out. What's going on? Listening to the conversation between Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang, a trace of doubt appeared in Lin Qianqian's eyes. Alright, Beichen, didn't you see the light coming from the building? Did you come here by coincidence? No. Di Beichen shook his head and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang before continuing. Actually, Hongzhuang found a stone when she was in the lower realm. We followed the stone's reaction and came here. The stone was a secret to them, but Di Xiaofeng and the other two were trustworthy people, so he didn't plan to hide it. After all, they were a team after entering the immortal cloud secret realm. Stone? Di Xiaofeng was stunned. A stone from the lower realm? Lin Qianqian was also shocked. A stone from the lower realm is related to the building in the immortal cloud secret realm? Hongzhuang, you're too lucky, aren't you? Normally, although there would be things in the upper realm that would fall to the lower realm, the chances were not high. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang was able to find something in the upper realm that resonated with the stone. The chances were not small at all. Actually, I didn't expect it to be like this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, but this is still a clue, maybe we can find something. Of course, Di Xiaofeng's eyes lit up. Since it can be used to sense something, it must be useful. You guys rest here for a while, we'll check the area around the door and see if we can find a way to enter, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Since they were already here, she naturally had to check it out. She naturally wanted to know the secret of the stone. Moreover, she always felt that the stone was fated with her. You guys go ahead. Di Xiaofeng nodded. Although there are many cultivators here, there are also many forces. Normally there won't be any danger. Hearing this, Di Beichen and the other two didn't say anything else and turned and walked towards the front of the building. As they gradually approached the white holy building, the power of light shone on the three. It was warm and made them feel comfortable. The power of light really gives me a comfortable feeling. Di Beichen smiled lightly. No matter when, the light was always what everyone yearned for. Maybe this building is the inheritance of a light attribute cultivator. Di Beichen raised his eyebrows, subconsciously looking at Bailey Hongzhuang. After all, they felt the legacy and Bailey Hongzhuang was the most. The legacy? After walking to the front of the door, many cultivators around them looked at the three of them. However, their gazes only lingered for a short while before they looked away and continued to examine the door in front of them. This building is really strange. After attracting everyone here, we can't find the entrance at all. I've already looked at every corner of the door, there's nothing special at all. Chapter 4897. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two approached, they began to look around for the mechanism to enter. Although the other cultivators had already searched all around the ruins these days, they still paid careful attention to everything. There might be something they missed. After Jun Qinbin and Xiao Sudong left the location of Di Beichen and the others, they returned to the territory they occupied before. Jun Qinbin, are you sure you didn't see wrong? That storage ring really belongs to Jun Shitao? Xiao Sudong still couldn't believe it. After all, Jun Shitao was the second young master of the Jun family, and his strength was also extremely outstanding. He couldn't believe that Jun Shitao would die at the hands of Di Beichen and the others. Jun Qinbin and the other two Jun family disciples' faces were extremely ugly, and for a moment they were also somewhat uneasy. I remember very clearly that the storage ring belongs to Shitao. Jun Qinbin's face was gloomy. If Shitao really died at their hands, then we must avenge him. After getting an affirmative answer, Xiao Sudong's eyes flashed slightly. This result was really a bit shocking. Even if that's the case, they must have used despicable means to sneak attack Shitao. Otherwise it's absolutely impossible. Jun Qinbin's eyes were filled with haze. When he looked at Di Baichen and the others, the hatred on his face was even more undisguised. That's for sure. Xiao Sudong nodded. In my opinion, Jun Shitao must have been unlucky and was ambushed by the three of them. As for the other things, they must have made up a lie to scare us and make us panic. We can't fall into their trap. That's right. Jun Qinbin agreed and then asked doubtfully, then what's the matter with this escape talisman? Xiao Sudong's expression was a bit complicated. Maybe they learned about it from other channels. Anyway, I don't believe what they said. We'll know when Xiao Sou and Ling Sun appear. I believe they should be attracted by this light soon. The Jun family disciple said. On the other side, after the three of them carefully examined the door of the building, they found that it was just as everyone said. They couldn't find any mechanism. I'm afraid there really isn't any mechanism here. Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly, if there is a trap, there are so many people here. Someone will accidentally touch it. Di Baichen nodded slightly, and his gaze fell on the keyhole in front of the main door. Wife, could the stone in your hand be the key? There was only one keyhole in the entire door, but it was obvious that no one had the key. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the keyhole and compared it with the stone in her hand. In the end, she shook her head. Although this keyhole is similar to the stone, it is not the same. The stone should not be the key. Hearing this, Di Baichen and Mo Yunjue were also puzzled. They were attracted by the stone, but they didn't expect that the stone wasn't the key. Don't worry, as long as the door is opened, we will definitely find the secret of this stone. Mo Yunjue said slowly. The three of them didn't give up and looked around the entire building before choosing to give up. When Di Xiaofeng and the others saw Bailey Hongzhuang coming back, they couldn't help but ask, do you have any clues? Chapter 4898. I knew it. Di Xiaofeng revealed a look of understanding. When I first came here, I had been studying this point. However, after studying for 3 whole days, I still didn't gain anything, so I gave up. Hongzhuang, did your stone have any effect as well? Lin Chanshan asked. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and shook her head. It is not the key to opening this building. Hearing this, Lin Chanshan's eyes flashed with a trace of disappointment. I see. It seems that there is no other way now. Lin Taxing sighed. In my opinion, we can only wait here now. Speaking of which, this place is really strange. Recently, it has been attracting more and more cultivators. Could it be that it wants to attract all the cultivators around here? Di Xiaofeng revealed a puzzled expression. He had never understood the purpose of this building. At least, many cultivators who want to take the treasure for themselves will not be able to succeed. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled. What if this building never opens? Lin Chanshan frowned. She was not worried about anything else, but this was what she was most worried about. If this building never opened, wouldn't they be wasting time here? Hearing this, everyone could not help but fall into silence. Regarding this point, everyone really could not judge the result. It shouldn't be. Di Baichen's handsome face was full of contemplation. I think this building will definitely open. Let's wait here patiently for a while. Everyone nodded. After all, if they were to leave like this, no one would be willing to. What's wrong with Xiaohei and Xiaobai? Di Xiaofeng found that Bailey Hongzhuang did not have Xiaohei, who was usually chattering, beside her. After searching for a while, he found Xiaohei and Xiaobai sleeping on the white lion's back. White lion's fur was very long. In addition, he was deliberately wrapping Xiaohei and Xiaobai. If one did not look carefully, one would not be able to tell. Bailey Hongzhuang looked a little sad. When we were fighting with Jun Lingxuan and the others, after she explained everything, Di Xiaofeng and the others finally understood what was going on. I didn't expect Jun Lingxuan and the others to go so far. Lin Chanshan looked angry. Although I didn't have a good impression of Xiao Sou in the past, I didn't hate her either. I didn't expect things to turn out this way. Birds of a feather flock together. How are Xiaohei and Xiaobai doing now? Di Xiaofeng's gaze was a little heavy. He knew how Di Baichen felt about Xiaohei and Xiaobai. If something happened to Xiaohei and Xiaobai, then, fortunately, Xiaohei and Xiaobai's lives are not in danger. However, they are now in a deep slumber and we don't know when they will wake up. It's good as long as they are fine. Lin Taxing said inside in his heart. Most people would not be able to save themselves from self-destruction. He really did not know how these two contracted beasts did it. After discovering that they could not find a way to enter the building, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others no longer focused. Instead, they began to cultivate in peace and patiently waited for the door to open. During this cultivation process, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the speed of cultivating the light energy was much faster than usual. She was pleasantly surprised. Chapter 48-99. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days had passed. In these 7 days, more and more cultivators gathered nearby. Almost every day, more and more cultivators would gather here. In just 7 days, the number of cultivators gathered here had doubled compared to when they originally wanted to arrive. More than 200 cultivators had gathered here. There were still many cultivators who did not give up and continued to search for a way to enter. However, even more cultivators chose to give up. If we continue to stay here, we might end up wasting our time here. That's right. We've been here for half a month and this building hasn't reacted at all. Perhaps the purpose of this building is to attract our attention. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm unwilling, I would have already left. As everyone waited longer and longer, the voices of dissatisfaction also increased. Many cultivators felt that this building was actually a waste of everyone's time. However, even though there were many complaints, no one chose to leave in the end. This was because no one knew if the building would open up after they left. Such a holy and glorious building, it was obvious that there were many treasures inside. Perhaps their harvest from searching in the immortal cloud secret realm for an entire year couldn't even compare to the harvest from this building. These few days, more and more people have gathered here. I feel that if we continue to wait here, perhaps all the cultivators will be here by themselves. Di Xiaofeng sighed. He really felt helpless about this situation. Now that so many cultivators have gathered here, I still haven't received any news about Ling Xiao. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. In these 7 days, many cultivators from the Di family and the Lin family had gathered. Their group could be considered very large. At the very least, if they stayed here, no other group would dare to covet them. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen and the others' eyes were filled with worry. Ling Xiao should be fine. Currently, we haven't heard any news about him from other cultivators. This should be good news, Di Beichen said slowly. In the process of waiting, a few cultivators from the Ao family appeared around them. Fortunately, they didn't get any news about Ao Ling Xiao from these cultivators. Based on the current situation, no news was good news. Ao Zhengquang hasn't appeared yet, this is really strange. Lin Taxing raised his eyebrows, looking a little puzzled. Now the leaders of each force have basically appeared, but Jun Lingxuan, Xiao Sou and Ao Zhengquang have not appeared. In my opinion, I'm afraid that Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sou won't be able to appear. The level of that escape talisman is not low. It must have teleported them to a place far away. Even if they wanted to rush over, it would not be a matter of time. I plan to wait for 2 more days. If I still don't get anything, I'll leave. Di Xiaofeng muttered. It wasn't a good idea to continue staying here. Even if the building would open up after he left, he would just accept it and take it as his bad luck. Seeing Emperor Xiaofeng make this decision so quickly, everyone was a little surprised, but thinking about it carefully, this was not a bad decision. Chapter 4900. Following the appearance of this ray of light, everyone's gaze changed and their eyes were filled with anticipation. Is the door about to open? Such a rich light. I feel as if my entire body has been cleansed and bathed in the power of the light. Haha, luckily I haven't left yet. Otherwise, I would have missed such a good opportunity. For a moment, all the cultivators present revealed joyful smiles and all their previous complaints disappeared into nothingness at this moment. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze focused on the building that was blooming with supreme brilliance. Then, she noticed that the door that had been tightly shut was finally showing signs of opening. Seeing this, Di Beichen and the others' eyes flashed with a glimmer of light. Almost all the cultivators approached the door at the first moment. Everyone knew that the sooner they entered, the greater their harvest. Let's go in quickly. Daihaowen's eyes were filled with joy, but his voice was tinged with anxiety. At this moment, the slightest hesitation could cause them to miss a good opportunity. Everyone nodded and immediately quickened their pace as they approached the door. Rumble. The door opened on its own and made a dull sound. Everyone rushed into the ruins like a swarm of bees. Their speed was pushed to the limit as they were afraid of being left behind. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not slow either as they quickly entered. As soon as they entered, everyone realized that the building was extremely large and there were 2 forks in the road. There were more than 30 cultivators from the Di family and the Lin family in total. After seeing this situation, everyone chose to split up without hesitation. Let's split up here. Those who are familiar with each other should form a team and take care of each other. Di Xiaofeng quickly said. Safety first. Don't lose your life for the treasure. Everyone remember this clearly. Lin Taxing also said. Let's go. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. No one was willing to waste any time while fighting for the treasure. Bailey Hongzhuang, Di Beichen, and Mo Yunjue naturally walked towards one of the passages. Di Xiaofeng originally planned to lead the other members of the Di family, but thinking that Dai Heoan was there, he chose Di Beichen and the other two. After all, before they left, her family had repeatedly reminded her to take good care of Beichen and Hongzhuang. The speed of the four of them was not slow. Although they were not the first to enter, their speed still surpassed most of the cultivators. This building was no different from the layout of the ruins that Bailey Hongzhuang had seen before. There were still rooms here. The only difference was that this place was dazzling with gold and jade, and it was as bright as day inside. Everywhere was filled with holy radiance. Walking here, everyone's hearts seemed to have been cleansed, and they were filled with awe and respect. When everyone passed by the first room, they found that many cultivators had already gathered inside. At this moment, a fight had already broken out for the treasure. The sound of fighting mixed with the sound of wind breaking could be heard incessantly. The other cultivators had even blocked the door, making it impossible to see what was inside. Seeing this scene, the four of them continued to move forward without hesitation. They did not want to waste any time here. This was because they all knew that the deeper they went in the ruins, the higher the value of the treasure. Chapter 4901. Of course, there were many cultivators who had the same idea as Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Everyone rushed forward without hesitation. Regardless of whether it was the top cultivators cultivated by the major families or the major forces, the difference in strength was not very big. If anyone could obtain an excellent treasure or inheritance, they could completely crush the other cultivators. Therefore, this kind of opportunity was everyone's dream. Every time this happens, I feel that I shouldn't have put all my energy into cultivating my movement technique, Di Xiaofeng lamented as he flew forward. The competition in the upper realm is indeed fierce, Mo Yunjue said quietly. His cold voice still did not have any warmth. Finally, the four of them arrived at a room. When they opened the door and saw what was inside, even with their experience, they couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Oh my God! Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with shock. Am I seeing things? Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two, as well as Bai Shi and Xiao Xuanzi, stared at the scene in a daze. Bodhi fruit, thousand silk leaf, colored glaze water. These are all rare treasures and they're all piled up here. How terrifying is the heritage of the owner of this ruin. Di Xiaofeng did not know how to express his feelings at this moment. He always knew that the owner of this ruin must have accumulated a lot of treasures throughout his life, but the treasures in front of him were too terrifying. This had gone beyond the scope of heroism. This was a treasure trove. If such treasures appeared in a ruin, he would already be shocked. However, this was only a room in this ruin and there were so many things. How many treasures would there be in this ruin? Don't think about it. Quickly put these treasures away. Di Beichen reminded everyone, then said, Xiao Xuanzi, guard outside the room. Alert us if anyone comes near. Understood. Xiao Xuanzi quickly nodded and acted as a sentinel. In the past, this kind of task was usually given to Xiao He and Xiao Bai. However, Xiao He and Xiao Bai had fallen into a deep sleep, so this task naturally fell on Xiao He's shoulders. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't delay any longer. They immediately put away the treasures as fast as they could. At the same time, every room in the ruins was filled with a dazzling array of treasures, causing every cultivator who entered to be pleasantly surprised. Master, someone's coming. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three kept the treasures into their Qingquan bags, Xiao Xuanzi's voice rang out. Then Jun Qinbin and the others appeared before everyone's eyes. It's really a small world, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly, her eyes falling on Jun Lingxuan and Xiao Sudong. The other party obviously didn't expect Di Beichen and the others to be here. A trace of awkwardness flashed across their faces. Although their eyes were filled with desire, they didn't plan to make a move. After all, whether it was Di Xiaofeng or Di Beichen, their strength couldn't be underestimated. Without enough confidence, they couldn't make a move rashly. Most importantly, wasting time here was undoubtedly the most uneconomical thing to do. Let's go. Xiao Sudong glanced coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, then immediately turned and left. In response, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others ignored him and walked out of the room. Chapter 4902. As they advanced, Bailey Hongzhuang discovered that the scope of the ruins was not ordinary, and the number of treasures inside was even more shocking. Later on, there were very few conflicts between cultivators, because there were other unexplored rooms waiting for them. This is the first time in my life that I've seen a ruin with so many treasures. If I didn't experience it myself, even if someone told me, I wouldn't believe it. Di Xiaofeng's dark and bright eyes were filled with indescribable astonishment. Even if all of this really happened in front of him, he still couldn't believe it and only felt that it was a dream. Indeed, the number of treasures here is a bit too shocking. Di Baichen's deep eyes flickered with contemplation. It seems like someone piled all the treasures here, but didn't set up any obstacles at all. This is completely different from what we encountered before. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. I don't know why, but although the journey has been very smooth, I vaguely feel that something isn't right. From the lower realm to the upper realm, she had seen a few ruins. The treasures in the lower realm naturally couldn't be compared to the upper realm, but the owner of the ruins should have the same idea. Only cultivators who were recognized could receive his inheritance, but this wasn't reflected at all in this ruin. It seemed like someone had piled up a treasure trove and was just waiting for everyone to share the spoils. Perhaps it was because it was too easy to get, so it felt strange. I also feel that it's a bit strange, Di Baichen frowned, but I can't figure out what the problem is. Could it be that we're thinking too much? Di Xiaofeng couldn't help but say, the owner of this ruin is of the light attribute, maybe his personality is just that generous? Hearing this, the four of them looked at each other. Although they also felt that this reason was ridiculous, they couldn't think of any other reason other than this. Hongzhuang, after we entered the ruin, did the stone react? Mo Yunjue asked. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. No. Originally, the stone had some reaction when they were outside, but after entering the ruin, the stone no longer had any reaction. Regarding this, she also felt that it was very strange. However, this also made her understand that the stone really had nothing to do with this ruin. As for why it attracted her before, she also didn't understand. Perhaps after leaving the ruin, she would have a chance to figure it out. In this ruin, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others obtained some treasures. During this journey, all the cultivators that they met had smiles on their faces, and they couldn't control the joy in their hearts. With these treasures, they would be able to improve their cultivation and surpass other cultivators. How could they not be happy? Finally, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the main hall. When they arrived, they found where many cultivators were gathered. At this moment, the door of the main hall was closed, and the two paths finally converged at the same place. Xiaofeng's. Di Xiaofeng Di Baichen Di Xiaofeng's. And Di Xiaofeng Shaf. Di Xiaofeng nodded. The treasures in this ruin are truly shocking. Just by looking at your expression, I can tell that you've had a great harvest. Chapter 4903. Hearing Lin Chanshan's words, even the cultivators beside Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but nod in agreement. All the waiting was worth it. Just these rewards alone would allow me to leave the immortal cloud secret realm without any regrets. Di Xiaofeng's handsome face was filled with a warm smile. Even if he told his family about this, they would not believe him. Haha, that's right. Lin Taxing was also in a good mood. The main hall is so big. Maybe there are precious treasures inside. When we leave later, let's not split up. Once we leave the relic, the battle will begin. Di Baichen reminded everyone. Now, everyone's hearts were filled with joy and they had neglected other things. Hearing this, everyone immediately understood Di Baichen's meaning and nodded in agreement. In the relic, everyone was busy looking for gains and naturally did not have the opportunity to covet other people's treasures. However, once they left the relic, the situation would be different. Everyone had a lot of precious treasures. If there were few people or they were alone, they would likely become the target of others. Fortunately, there were many cultivators from the Di family and the Lin family who had entered the relic. Ordinary people would not dare to target them. Xiaofeng, you're here. A familiar voice rang out. Then everyone saw Murong Jing appear. Murong, you're here too. Di Xiaofeng was overjoyed. Why didn't I see you before? I was lucky. I just arrived when the relic opened. Ah. Murong Jing could not hide the joy in his voice and laughed cheerfully. I see. You're really lucky. Di Xiaofeng nodded with a smile. Let's have a good gathering later. Murong Jing nodded and looked at the closed door of the main hall. Now, everyone was most concerned about the main hall. However, as everyone tried to break the door of the main hall, it did not work. It's the same as the door. There are no mechanisms and we can't open it. A cultivator's voice rang out, full of helplessness and disappointment. Why don't we try to attack the door together and blast it open? Nangong Yuqing's voice resounded, rallying everyone. Nangong Yuqing was the most outstanding cultivator of the Nangong family. His strength was outstanding, so his appeal was naturally strong. Hearing his call, the group of cultivators nodded one after another. After all, everyone wanted to know what kind of treasure was in the main hall. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others didn't pay any attention to it. They were Nangong Yuqing's opponents, so why would they respond to his call? That was naturally impossible. Naturally, Nangong Yuqing also noticed Di Beichen. In fact, with Di Beichen's outstanding appearance and temperament, no matter how many people were around, it was still difficult to ignore his existence. Di Beichen, are you not going to make a move? Nangong Yuqing glanced over. If you don't do anything, then the treasures in the main hall will have nothing to do with you. As soon as he said that, everyone's eyes fell on Di Beichen. Chapter 4904. Nangong Yuqing, according to what you're saying, as long as no one makes a move, they won't get a share of the treasures in the main hall? Di Beichen sneered. Who do you think you are? Why should you be the one to make the rules? What's more, there are so many cultivators here. I'm afraid it's impossible for all of us to make a move together, Bailey Hongzhuang said. Although the main hall wasn't small, it was impossible for all the cultivators to make a move together. Most importantly, they were inside the ruins. If they made a move together, no one would be able to bear the consequences. Originally, the crowd didn't pay much attention to Nangong Yuqing's words, but after hearing Di Beichen's words, they all frowned. That's right. Making a move isn't a big deal. Isn't it too complicated? Some of the cultivators standing far away from the main hall expressed their dissatisfaction. Nangong Yuqing, why don't you make a move? We'll make a move instead. Di Xiaofeng raised his eyebrows and asked with a smile. Nangong Yuqing, who originally wanted to cause trouble for Di Beichen, saw that the situation was completely different from what he had expected. His expression became gloomy. You're the young master of the Di family. It's normal for you to make a move. I won't make a move. What can you do about it? Di Beichen's lips curved into an evil smile. His calm appearance revealed an evil and domineering aura. His handsome face became even more charming. Just one look from him was enough to captivate a person's soul. Looking at Di Beichen like this, all the women present had an infatuated look in their eyes. Such a handsome man was truly fascinating. Nangong Yuqing's face was filled with anger, but facing Di Beichen he really couldn't do anything. After all, Di Beichen's identity, status and family background weren't inferior to his. Most importantly, there were many cultivators from the Di family and Lin family here. Once a conflict broke out, the result would be uncertain. Di Beichen just looked at Nangong Yuqing. This guy seemed to have forgotten what happened last time and was looking for trouble again. After seeing this scene, the cultivators from the Nangong family quietly reminded Nangong Yuqing that there was no benefit in making a move against Di Beichen. Nangong Yuqing coldly snorted and gave Di Beichen a fierce look before ignoring him. Once he left the ruins, he would find a way to teach Di Beichen a lesson. Boom. Everyone's attack was aimed at the main hall's door. This is the door. Seeing this, another group of cultivators joined in the attack, but the door still did not respond. And we. 2. In my opinion, this situation is quite possible. Everyone began to ponder. They really couldn't see through this ruin. Just as everyone was talking and guessing how to enter the main hall, a sound suddenly came from the main hall's door. Hearing this, everyone's eyes turned to the main hall. Their eyes were burning with anticipation. Creak. Chapter 4905. Within their line of sight, the great hall was filled with a shocking number of treasures. It was a dazzling array of treasures that blinded their eyes. If I'm not mistaken, that should be the blood essence of a dragon, right? Heavens, that's the phoenix blood fruit. Isn't that the long-lost book of chaos? Cries of surprise rang out. Everyone's eyes were burning with passion. Such a treasure had completely exceeded their expectations. Almost immediately, everyone wanted to charge into the great hall. However, they were all blocked by an invisible barrier. However, it was because of this barrier that everyone had time to see the treasures in the great hall. The blood essence of a dragon. It said that after using it to refine one's body, one's physical body would become extremely powerful. Its defensive power would be comparable to a demonic beast's. There are very few dragons in the dragon clan. Their blood essence is even more precious. It's almost impossible to obtain it on a normal day. The phoenix blood fruit is a fruit that grows near the phoenix. After consuming it, one's cultivation will increase tremendously. Furthermore, one's strength may even contain a trace of the phoenix's power. I've only heard of such a treasure. I've never thought that I would actually see it. The Book of Chaos. I've heard that it's an extremely high-level treasure. It's already beyond the scope of our knowledge. The Book of Chaos contains the laws of heaven and earth. As long as one can comprehend the Book of Chaos, one's power will increase rapidly. One can even break through the bottleneck and master the power of the laws. Although there's only one page in the Book of Chaos, it's already an unparalleled treasure. How could so many long-lost treasures be gathered here? This is simply too terrifying. Our luck is just too good. We've actually found so many treasures. In an instant, all the cultivators' hearts were captivated by the treasures before them. With these treasures, they would be able to surpass the majority of cultivators. As long as they obtain these treasures, they would become a new force to be reckoned with when they leave the Divine Cloud secret realm. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were stunned when they saw this scene. The shock on their faces was not much better than the other cultivators. The number of treasures here is simply too shocking. I'm really curious as to who the owner of this ruin is to have so many treasures in his possession. Di Xiaofeng's face was filled with shock. The treasures that he had previously obtained had already filled him with shock. Now, everything that he saw gave him a sense of disbelief. This is simply too shocking. I'm of the major family's knowledge of this ruin's existence. Lin Taxing could not help but sigh. If the major clans knew about the existence of this relic, it was likely that they would not have a chance to train in the Immortal Cloud secret realm. Speaking of which, this Immortal Cloud secret realm has been opened many times already. But this time we actually encountered it. Our luck is really not bad. Lin Shanshan's face lit up. One's fortune was also related to one's luck. The fact that they were able to come here and obtain these rewards already proved that they were very lucky. The disciples of the Di clan and the Lin clan were equally delighted and eager to give it a try. Of the the world of 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 the divine of the world of the world of the world of the treasures. Of the God art. Of the major of the world. Chapter 4906. Master, the treasures here are just too amazing. White Lion's eyes lit up with excitement. He had actually found treasures that could increase the power of his bloodline in this place. Such treasures were something that he could only come across by chance. He had never expected to find one here. This was a treasure trove. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. Looking at the treasures in front of her, she did not know how to express her feelings. The things here were simply too rich and shocking, giving her a feeling of disbelief. Beichen, I don't know why, but after coming here, my intuition has become stronger. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Di Beichen. Even though she was drooling over these treasures, there were simply too many of them. So many that she felt that they were all fake. Hongzhuang, you're thinking too much. These are all real. Lin Shanshan smiled when she heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. Di Beichen's eyes darkened. My wife, do you suspect that this is an illusion? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently. Her deep eyes rippled with a thoughtful light. That might be the case. Don't you think that the treasures here are simply too unbelievable? There are indeed too many of them. Di Beichen replied in a low voice. However, based on the current situation, I feel that these treasures are all real. The treasures that we've just obtained are real. This is what I've never understood. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. She had never understood this point, but the feeling in her heart was very obvious. She could vaguely sense that something was amiss. However, she could not pinpoint the source of the problem. Bailey Hongzhuang remained silent as she thought of this. Before she could figure out the source of the problem, her words would not be convincing. My wife, let's take a look first. Di Beichen did not doubt Bailey Hongzhuang's words. They should observe carefully before making a decision. Yes. Under the expectant gazes of the crowd, the restriction grew fainter and fainter. Obviously, it wouldn't be long before the restriction completely dissipated. As the restriction grew fainter and fainter, the covetous look in everyone's eyes grew even more intense. All of their attention was focused on the treasure. In their minds, they had already begun to imagine the days after they obtained the treasures. At that time they would definitely show off their might. It's fading. The restriction is about to open. Get ready. Everyone was accumulating power, ready to fight for the treasures. As the restriction completely dissipated, all the cultivators rushed in at once. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not slow either. They rushed into the hall one after another. However, after entering the main hall, Bailey Hongzhuang felt that there was an invisible force affecting her. At the same time, a cold energy came from the stone, and her mind, which was gradually becoming crazy, was restored to its sobriety. After discovering this, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with horror. She finally understood where the problem was, that she had always felt something was amiss. So it was here. Di Baichen had already snatched the Book of Chaos. His deep and enchanting eyes were filled with passion, and he could not hide the excitement on his face. So this is the Book of Chaos. Chapter 4907. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't figure out what the problem was. Looking at the treasure in front of her, she held it in her hand. Immediately after, she found that there was an uncontrollable excitement spreading from her mind. She couldn't contain this excitement at all. She kept thinking that as long as she could get this treasure, she would definitely have greater achievements in the future. It was because of this thought that a trace of madness flashed in her eyes. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang fell into madness, the power from the stone restored a trace of clarity in her eyes. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately put the stone down. Her exquisite face was filled with horror. She looked at the treasure on the table in shock. She never thought that this treasure would have such a terrifying, bewitching power. When she turned her eyes again, she found that the cultivators around her had an abnormal blush on their faces. Their eyes were filled with madness, and they were no longer as calm as before. After discovering this, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly pulled Di Baichen back. Baichen, put this thing down. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Baichen nervously. She was really worried that Di Baichen would be bewitched by this power. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Baichen was also slightly stunned. Why? It's too late to explain now. If you believe me, put this thing down quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly said. Even though Di Baichen's heart was full of confusion, after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, he still chose to believe her. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang was the person he loved the most. She definitely wouldn't lie to him. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Xiaofeng and the others. Big brother, put it down quickly. Di Xiaofeng had just grabbed a treasure when he suddenly heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words. He couldn't help but ask, it wasn't easy to get this treasure. How can I put it down? Once this thing is brought back, its value will be astonishing. Big brother, just believe in Hongzhuang. He didn't know why Bailey Hongzhuang did this, but he also noticed the anxiety on Bailey Hongzhuang's face. Thinking about it, there must be very serious consequences for Bailey Hongzhuang to have such a reaction. Hongzhuang, are you crazy? You're giving up on such a treasure? Lin Qianqian was puzzled. Anyone would dream of having such a treasure. Most importantly, if they gave up on this treasure and the cultivators of other clans obtained it, then they would lose to the cultivators of other clans. This was something she absolutely did not want. There's something wrong with these treasures. Put them down. Bailey Hongzhuang hurriedly said and turned to look at Di Baichen and Mo Yunjue. Tell our people to leave the main hall quickly. There's something strange here. Seeing this, Di Baichen pulled Di Xiaofeng and the others out of the main hall without hesitation. Di Xiaofeng and the others were unwilling. They only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen's decision was too strange. Baichen, if you want to go out, then go out. We won't go out. Lin Taxing couldn't help but say. These precious treasures were right in front of him. He simply couldn't give them up. Chapter 4908. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the surrounding cultivators all looked at her with ridicule. Bailey Hongzhuang, you wouldn't say such words just because you want to keep it for yourself, right? Nangong Yuqing sneered. Do you think anyone will believe you at a time like this? It's up to you to believe me or not. Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was cold. She really didn't want to save Nangong Yuqing. However, there were so many cultivators present and she didn't want them all to lose their lives here. Bailey Hongzhuang, if you want to leave, then leave. We won't be fooled by your tricks. Xiao Sudong also sneered. Di Xiaofeng and the others still didn't want to leave after seeing this scene. However, they thought that Bailey Hongzhuang wouldn't lie to them at this time and decided to trust Bailey Hongzhuang. In the next moment, Di Xiaofeng quickly walked to Murongjing's side. Murongjing, put down the things and leave with me. Xiaofeng, are you crazy? There are so many treasures here. Wouldn't it be a loss if we just leave like this? Murongjing rolled his eyes. This was a good opportunity to improve himself. Whoever gave it up would be a fool. Although I don't know what's going on, the situation is urgent. Trust me this time. We've been brothers for so many years, I won't lie to you, Di Xiaofeng said. Di Xiaofeng didn't care whether Murong Jing agreed or not and pulled him out of the main hall. Xiaofeng, stop messing around. Murong Jing's face was filled with anger. If you continue like this, I'll make a move. Even if you do, I'll pull you out. Di Xiaofeng's attitude was very firm. He and Murong Jing were best friends. If there was really something strange here, then he couldn't let anything happen to Murong Jing. Bailey Hongzhuang's people immediately walked out of the main hall. In the process, they dragged the cultivators from the Di family and the Lin family out. They did not give the other party any chance at all. Even if the family members were full of dissatisfaction, Di Beichen and Lin Taxing still asked everyone to leave. Everyone had no choice but to follow him and leave. Bailey Hongzhuang is really crazy. How can she ask us to leave when we have such a great opportunity? What are we going to do about this loss? Let's have a good talk. If we leave just like this, we will definitely not be able to compare to the cultivators of the other clans. That's right, what should we do? The group of disciples were filled with depression. They even wanted to directly refute Bailey Hongzhuang. However, Di Beichen was the young master of the Di family, and Bailey Hongzhuang was the young master's wife. It was obviously inappropriate for them to refute like this. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. It was not until they had left the main hall that Bailey Hongzhuang felt relieved. Of course, Bailey Hongzhuang's group had caused quite a stir and had attracted the attention of some cultivators. Everyone had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang had deliberately said this to distract everyone so that they could fight for the treasures. However, when they noticed that Bailey Hongzhuang's group had really turned around and left without taking anything, their eyes filled with confusion. What's going on with them? Could Bailey Hongzhuang be telling the truth? Chapter 4909. Only after they left the main hall did Bailey Hongzhuang let out a sigh of relief. Hongzhuang, tell me what's going on? Di Xiaofeng immediately asked. Not to mention Murong Jing, who was still glaring at him furiously, even he himself wanted to know what was going on. Lin Qianqian and the others were also looking at Bailey Hongzhuang with burning gazes, anger faintly visible in their eyes. Obviously, if Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't give them a reasonable explanation, they would really get angry. Wife, don't be anxious. Tell me in detail. Di Beichen stood beside Bailey Hongzhuang. His gaze swept past everyone, blocking the furious gazes of the others. Noticing Di Beichen's expression, everyone restrained their anger. Look carefully at the expressions of those cultivators in the main hall. Bailey Hongzhuang didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reminded everyone to observe. What expressions can they have? Aren't they excited? Lin Qianqian said without hesitation. Anyone who sees so many treasures will inevitably be excited. However, when everyone carefully observed the expressions of the cultivators in the main hall, they noticed something different. I noticed that their expression seemed somewhat strange. Di Xiaofeng suddenly said doubtfully. Before Bailey Hongzhuang reminded him, he didn't notice it. Now that he looked carefully, he noticed that everyone's faces were filled with excitement. It was normal for him to be excited, but there was something strange about this excitement. Most importantly, everyone's eyes were dyed with a trace of blood red, filled with madness. Obviously, something was wrong with this point. After Di Xiaofeng noticed it, the other cultivators naturally noticed it as well. Immediately, a strange light appeared in their eyes. At this moment, another figure appeared beside Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Bailey Hongzhuang saw that this person was actually Qin Feng. Qin Feng? Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. So far, other than the cultivators from the Di family and the Lin family, no one else had left the main hall. Obviously, no one would believe what he said at this time. Unexpectedly, Qin Feng had also come out. Moreover, he did not have any treasures with him. This caused her to be somewhat flabbergasted. Qin Feng glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and cupped his hands. Thank you for your reminder. I owe you one. Upon hearing this, Lin Qianqian and the others' expressions changed. Qin Feng was the strongest among all the cultivators here. Normally, he was also the representative of all the cultivators here. Nobody could overlook his existence. Since he had come out, it proved that there was something strange about the main palace. After the Great Devil Sect's cultivators saw Qin Feng leave, many of them started to change their minds. After hesitating for a while, he decided to put down the treasures and leave. The stronger one was, the more they desired these treasures. Since even Qin Feng was willing to give up, it was only natural that they would do the same. Wife, how did you find out that there was a problem here? Di Beichen's deep black eyes were filled with doubt and astonishment. At this moment he was also somewhat afraid. If it wasn't for Bailey Hongzhuang's reminder, he would probably be the same as the other cultivators in the main hall. It's all thanks to the stone in my hand, Bailey Hongzhuang explained. Chapter 49:10. With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen and the others finally understood. It turns out that this stone has such an effect. If it weren't for this stone, I'm afraid we would all be in trouble. Di Xiaofeng's eyes were filled with amazement before he looked at Bailey Hongzhuang apologetically. Sister-in-law, I'm really sorry for my attitude just now. Lin Qianqian and the others were also apologetic. When they heard that Bailey Hongzhuang had asked them to leave, they were actually very dissatisfied. Because there were so many treasures, it was really too difficult to give up just like that. Now that they understood that everything Bailey Hongzhuang did before was to save them, their hearts were naturally filled with regret. Hongzhuang, it was all our fault before. I'm really sorry, Lin Qianqian hurriedly said. Looking at everyone's apologetic faces, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and waved her hand. It's okay, you don't have to apologize. The influence of this main hall is too great. Everyone can't resist the temptation of the treasures. If it weren't for the stone's help, I wouldn't have reacted better than everyone else. As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang once again looked at the treasures in the ruins. She really didn't expect that this seemingly risk-free ruin would actually have so many problems. This kind of danger was actually 100 times more dangerous than the ruins they had encountered before. Because it could make everyone fall into a state of madness. Isn't the owner of this ruin a light attribute cultivator? Why is everything here so strange? Lin Taxing was puzzled. Generally speaking, light meant justice. As long as it was a light attribute cultivator, they shouldn't do such a sinister thing. However, they encountered it here. Perhaps all of this is deliberately disguised. It is precisely because this attribute will make us unconsciously lower our defense that it is easier to fall into a trap. Bang bang bang. A battle broke out in the main hall. Many cultivators had already started fighting over the treasures. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stood outside the main hall and looked at each other. This situation was really too strange. Mo Yunjue turned to look at Qin Feng and suddenly asked, Qin Feng, how did you know that something was wrong here? Qin Feng looked up at Mo Yunjue and said, I didn't think so at first, but everything before was too smooth, so I always felt strange in my heart. Since entering the main hall, I felt that there was an energy inadvertently affecting my mind. The cultivation method itself has the ability to sober me up. Ordinary bewitchment can't confuse me, but the power of bewitchment here is really strong. Fortunately, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice helped me and made me sober up. So that's the case. Everyone immediately understood and their hearts were filled rejoiced. If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't have this stone, they might have all died here. An idea suddenly popped into my head. Emperor Xiaofeng suddenly said, this ruin has always been releasing light. Maybe it's to attract cultivators and make them all stay here. As soon as these words came out, everyone was stunned for a moment. Then they all felt their hair stand on end. Because what Di Xiaofeng said was very likely true. If that's really the case, then it's really too terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang's pitch-black bright eyes bloomed with a dim light. This kind of method was simply like that of a demon. Chapter 49:11. Everyone connected everything that had happened before and felt that this dazzling, holy and bright ruin was exceptionally strange. I wonder what is the purpose of this main hall to attract everyone? Mo Yunjue looked at the people fighting in the main hall with a calm gaze. Although he could see some abnormal blushes on the faces of these cultivators, at least there was no danger so far. Although Qin Feng's personality was cold and arrogant, as the eldest senior brother of the Great Devil Sect, he still ordered his disciples to leave the main hall. Although the Great Devil Sect's cultivators were unwilling, most of them still chose to believe in Qin Feng, while some who had been bewitched still stayed inside, unwilling to come out. Regarding this, Qin Feng did not say anything more. As the eldest senior brother, he had already done his best. Some people had obviously been bewitched, so even if he said anything more, it would be useless. Moreover, this main hall was so strange. If he went in again, he could not guarantee that he would not be able to come out. Why don't we leave first? This place is too strange. Only by leaving here will we feel safe, Di Xiaofeng suggested. Previously, he felt that this was a paradise for cultivators, but now that he realized the problem, he felt that this was a hell that ate people without spitting out their bones. If they continued to stay, no one knew what would happen. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others nodded slightly. They were indeed unwilling to stay here. Then let's go. Lin Shanshan and the others also took a step forward. Now this ruin was a trap in their eyes. No one knew if they would lose their lives if they continued to stay here. They did not care about others, the only thing they could care about was their own brothers and sisters. Good. Everyone agreed. Now they no longer had the enthusiasm for the treasure. This gloomy and terrifying feeling had already extinguished their previous enthusiasm. After Xiao Sudong obtained the treasure, his gaze fell on Di Beichen and the others. When he saw that Di Beichen and the others had actually chosen to leave, he felt somewhat strange. Most importantly, the people of the Great Devil sect had also chosen to leave together. This was strange. No one would not be moved by such a treasure, yet they chose to give it up. Could it be that there was something wrong with this place? Thinking of this, Xiao Sudong also started to doubt. At this moment, a loud laugh rang out. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others heard this sound, they could not help but stop in their tracks. When they turned their heads, they discovered that the body of the cultivator holding the most treasures was gradually festering. It was a terrifying sight. However, there was still an excited smile on his face, which looked very strange in such a situation. Ah! Lin Shanshan couldn't help but exclaim. Such a situation was really creepy. This person is really crazy. Let's go. Lin Shanshan could not help but wrap her arms around her chest. It was warm, but she felt an unprecedented chill. After the first cultivator had such a situation, the other cultivators also began to experience the same thing. After seeing this situation, Xiao Sudong didn't dare to hold the treasure anymore. He immediately threw it away and rushed out. His face was completely pale and there were no other thoughts in his mind. The only thought in his mind was to leave this place. Chapter 49:12. Let's go. Let's get out of here. Xiao Sudong shouted at Jun Qinbin, but his footsteps never stopped. His gaze was fixed on Di Beichen and the rest. Although both sides were enemies, he only wanted to follow Di Beichen and the rest. Only then would he feel at ease. Jun Qinbin was also in a state of confusion. When he suddenly heard Xiao Sudong's shout, he could not help but be stunned. He regained some of his senses and did not dare to stay any longer. He hurriedly left the treasures behind and ran out. Some of the cultivators who were fighting over the treasures immediately understood the problem when they saw this situation. They all ran out of the main hall as if they were running for their lives. They no longer had the desire to fight for the treasures. However, some of the cultivators who had held the treasures for a longer time had completely lost their minds. Even though their teammates shouted with all their might, it was still useless. In a short period of time, many of the cultivators had already rotted and melted into ghastly white bones. The scene was horrifying and bloody, sending chills down one's spine. After the other cultivators rushed out, they quickly approached Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest. Until now, they still did not understand the situation. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was the first cultivator to discover the problem. Everyone had already treated her as a life-saving straw. "Miss Bailey, what's going on?" One of the cultivators could not help but ask. He did not know Bailey Hongzhuang, but they were not enemies with the Di family. Hence he asked. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "I'm not sure what's going on here. The only thing I can be sure of is that there's something strange about these ruins. We can't take the treasures in the main hall." At this moment, Xiao Sudong and the rest were all pale. The white floor of the main hall had been stained red with blood. It was extremely horrifying. Heavens, I never thought that this place would be so terrifying. Previously I thought that this was heaven. In the blink of an eye, it has become hell. Miss Bailey, you're really amazing. You actually discovered the problem here. That's right. If it wasn't for Miss Bailey's reminder, I'm afraid that our situation would be even worse. We might have already lost our lives here. Everyone's eyes were filled with sincerity. Bailey Hongzhuang's previous shout had indeed had a certain effect on them. If it weren't for the fact that the cultivators of the Di family, Lin family, and the Great Devil sect had chosen to leave, they would have already focused all their attention on the treasure. Even if they discovered that there was a problem later on, they probably wouldn't have been able to come out. Most of the cultivators who came out were hesitant before, which was why they did not completely fall into the trap. When the cultivators of the Di family saw that their young madam was being praised so highly, they were all overjoyed. Young madam is really amazing. She can still remain so calm at a time like this. That's right, I admire young madam more and more now. With young master and young madam, I suddenly feel that there's something to look forward to. Di Xiaofeng and the others also smiled. This was probably the only thing they could be happy about right now. It's just that we discovered it earlier. Is there a need to be so exaggerated? Xiao Sudong curled his lips. Seeing that all the limelight had been stolen by Bailey Hongzhuang, he felt a burst of displeasure in his heart. Chapter 49:13. Xiao Sudong only muttered a few words, but he did not expect Lin Chanshan to hear it. Being suddenly brought up by Lin Chanshan, his face was a little awkward. Xiao Sudong, if I remember correctly, we are enemies now. Since you have come out of the main palace, you should go your own way. Don't be with us, it will be hard on you. Di Xiaofeng's lips curled into a mocking smile, his face full of displeasure. If it were not for the fact that he had a good relationship with the Xiao family, he would not have bothered to talk nonsense. However, the relationship between the two parties would only get worse in the future. I'm just saying what I think. What's more, there are only two paths here. I'm willing to take this one. What can you do about it? Xiao Sudong forced himself to be tough, but anyone could hear the guilt in his words. They suddenly felt that this guy was really thick-skinned. Everyone shook their heads. Not only was he thick-skinned, but he was also saying bad things about others. He seemed to be particularly petty. Then you take this path, we'll take another one, Di Beichen said lightly. Xiao Sudong's expression changed, and he looked at Di Beichen hatefully. This guy did not give him any leeway. Then I'll change too. Xiao Sudong did not care about his face at this moment. After all, nothing was more important than his life. No matter what, he had to follow the group closely. Otherwise, this ruin was so strange that no one knew what would happen next. If he was separated from Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, he really did not know if he could walk out. Everyone rolled their eyes and did not want to say anything. Di Beichen and the others were too lazy to care. At this time, they were not in the mood to argue with Xiao Sudong. After all, it was best to leave this ruin as soon as possible. In the next moment, everyone chose a path and walked out. However, after they set off, they found that there were layers of fog in front of them. They could only see within a radius of 10 meters and could not see anything further. How could this be? Lin Chanshan was shocked. She did not expect such a sudden change. It seems that this remnant is truly strange. I'm afraid that it's trying to trap all of us here. Di Beichen's deep eyes turned serious. He looked around cautiously. Obviously, this ruin did not want any of them to leave. Heavens, I thought my luck was too good. I didn't expect this place to be such a terrifying place. Then what should we do? Do you think you can make it out alive? Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was equally solemn. We can only take it one step at a time. Everyone try not to split up and think of a way to leave this place together. Hearing that, everyone nodded. At that moment, everyone's hearts were united. They all had the same thought and they only wanted to leave this place alive. Wife, does that stone have any guidance? Di Beichen asked. No. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. The stone is still the same as before. Other than keeping me awake, it has no other guidance. It seems that we can only rely on ourselves to find a way to leave this place. A determined look appeared on Di Beichen's handsome face. He held Bailey Hongzhuang's hand tightly and said, "Let's go." Chapter 49:14. As everyone continued to move forward, no one could tell which path they were walking on. That was because no one could see clearly beyond 10 meters. However, after everyone had walked for some distance, a cry of surprise was suddenly heard. What happened? Di Xiaofeng asked as he looked at the cultivators who were crying out in surprise. The cultivator's face was pale without a trace of blood. He trembled as he said, "Didn't you notice that the number of people seems to have decreased?" Following this cultivator's words, everyone present was stunned. After carefully sizing up the group, they realized that there were indeed fewer people than before. How could this be? Everyone was dumbfounded. They had been walking together all along, but no one noticed when the cultivators disappeared. Why did they disappear for no reason? What should we do? An indescribable panic exploded in everyone's hearts. Such a strange situation made everyone's hair stand on end. As cultivators, everyone was already used to seeing life and death. If they died for no reason, at least they wouldn't be in such a state. However, it was truly frightening for him to disappear without a trace. It was as if there was an invisible hand surrounding them, and no one knew when it would reach out to them. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen looked at each other. This situation was completely out of their expectations. Along the way, they didn't notice that there were cultivators disappearing behind them at all. Most importantly, it disappeared without a sound. There wasn't even the slightest cry of pain. That was the biggest problem. No matter what, they couldn't understand why this happened. Just then, Di Beichen suddenly said, Let's put down all the treasures we obtained here. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Di Baichen continued, there's obviously something wrong with the things in this ruin. There's something wrong with the treasures in the main hall, and there's probably something wrong with the treasures we obtained. The disappearance of these people might be related to these treasures. For safety's sake, let's do this. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded after hearing Di Baichen's words. That's right, this is the safest. She felt that everyone was in such a predicament because of greed. After what happened in the main hall, she understood this point. Baichen, do you think that there are so many treasures in this hall that were left behind by cultivators in the past? Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Previously, no one understood why there were so many treasures here. Moreover, these treasures were all real. They knew very well that the things here were not illusions and they weren't in an illusion. It was impossible for so many treasures to be gathered in one place. Even if the owner of this ruin was incredible, it was still impossible to have so many treasures. However, according to Bailey Hongzhuang's guess, everything became possible. If that's the case, then the owner of this ruin is simply a devil. Di Baichen's face was gloomy. Such a terrifying method was not something that an ordinary person could do. Chapter 49:15. Now that they were faced with these treasures again, they no longer coveted them. Instead, they threw them away like hot potatoes. After Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen did so, Di Xiaofeng and the rest no longer hesitated. Although the treasures were good, they still needed to be alive to enjoy them. The treasures here were so terrifying that they did not want them anymore. Qin Feng did not hesitate either. He immediately took out the treasures and placed them on the ground. In an instant, everyone began to take out their items. The treasures that everyone usually fought over were now abandoned by everyone. Let's continue. After making the decision, everyone continued moving forward. However, along the way, cultivators were still disappearing one after another. Everyone was even more nervous. However, at this moment, no one could guarantee their safety. Not only that, when they entered, no one felt that this path was very long. However, now that they were about to leave, they felt that this path was incomparably long. They had obviously walked for a long time, yet they still could not see the exit. Qin Feng's voice was solemn and deep as he reminded everyone, this fog seems to have the ability to devour elemental energy. Along the way, he did not use any elemental energy, yet he found that the elemental energy in his body was gradually dissipating. Now, less than half of the elemental energy in his body was left. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest did not look too good when they heard this. This was because they also felt that the elemental energy in their body was dissipating. However, no one said it out loud. This would only increase the panic in everyone's heart. Qin Feng continued, I suggest that we stop and rest after walking for a while. If all our elemental energy is exhausted, it won't be good for us to stay here. No one objected to Qin Feng's suggestion. As the strongest existence among the cultivators, Qin Feng had a lot of authority. Most importantly, everyone's minds were already in a mess due to this bizarre situation. Naturally, they would listen to whoever had the idea. Qin Feng looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen. This ruin is very bizarre. Moreover, this path is extending endlessly. We don't know if we have returned to the starting point. It will be better to rest for a while and maintain our peak condition. All right. Di Baichen nodded. I have the same idea. For a moment, everyone gathered together and started recovering their essence energy. Qin Feng's gaze landed on the group of cultivators. Now, everyone should remember the people around you. This way, the moment someone disappears, you will be able to discover it. One more thing, is there anyone who is still holding on to the treasures that they haven't thrown away? As soon as he said that, all the cultivators present shook their heads. However, among the crowd, Bailey Hongzhuang still noticed a few cultivators who remained silent. Naturally, Qin Feng noticed this as well. He said, it is your business if you decide to leave the treasure behind. However, if any danger arises, you will have to bear the consequences. Since you don't want to give up the treasure, then you should sit a little further away from us. Don't bring danger to us. As soon as he said that, the cultivators who were unwilling to give up their treasures looked indignant. Qin Feng, what makes you say that? Exactly. Why can't we be together? Don't think that just because you are a member of the Great Devil sect, we are not afraid of you. Facing their dissatisfied voices, Qin Feng's expression was exceptionally cold. Since you guys refuse to cooperate, this is how it should be. Chapter 49:16. After hearing Qin Feng's decision, the other cultivators agreed with him. That's right. Since you guys want to keep the treasures, you guys should bear the risk. What if you implicate us? Now that you guys are about to lose your lives, you guys are still unwilling to part with the treasures. I really admire you guys. If you want the treasure, then stay away from us. Otherwise, throw it away. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes and met Yihang's calm and wise eyes. She immediately understood that Qin Feng wanted to use these people to test if the reason why some people went missing was because they were unwilling to part with the treasures. This decision meant that they had to give up on the lives of these people. This might be somewhat cruel, but it was also the best method at a time like this. If they couldn't find the reason, even though there were still a lot of people here, by the time they reached the entrance, there wouldn't be many people left. Jun Qinbin was also someone who was unwilling to part with the treasures. He was ranked third in his family. He had always been suppressed by Jun Lingshuan and Jun Zitao. Naturally, his cultivation resources couldn't be compared to those two. The Immortal Cloud Secret Realm was an extremely good opportunity for him. If he could obtain these treasures, his cultivation would definitely increase greatly. It was naturally impossible to compare with Jun Lingshuan. However, there was still hope for him to surpass Jun Zitao. He wasn't willing to give up this great opportunity just like that. Jun Qinbin, are you crazy? Xiao Sudong couldn't help but shout when he saw Jun Qinbin still being so persistent. You really want the treasures more than your life. Xiao Sudong, from the beginning to the end, all of this was guessed by Di Beichen and the others. Who can be sure that all of this is true? Perhaps all of this has nothing to do with the treasures. Don't you think it's a pity to give up just like that? Jun Qinbin's expression was persistent. Obviously, he had already made up his mind. I know it's indeed a pity. However, nothing is more important than our lives. A trace of hesitation flashed across Xiao Sudong's face. However, it turned into determination in the end. He was very clear that if he left the group now, it was very likely that he would lose his life here. Originally, he wasn't very familiar with Jun Qinbin. However, after coming to the ruins, he had always been with Jun Qinbin. Naturally, he didn't want Jun Qinbin to lose his life here. It's only 5 meters. I don't believe that something will happen. Jun Qinbin looked at Qin Feng coldly before saying to Xiao Sudong, don't worry. I'll be fine. Looking at Jun Qinbin's determined look, Xiao Sudong felt a little helpless. However, since Jun Qinbin had already made his decision, it was useless no matter what he said, so he simply stopped trying to persuade him. After hearing what Jun Qinbin said, the other cultivators had no choice but to agree. Just like that, the group was divided into 2 groups. Bailey Hongzhuang also found that the energy in her body was dissipating very quickly. However, the ruins were filled with the light attribute, so the recovery speed here was also very fast. Closing her eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang began to circulate the demon summoning scripture, absorbing the essence energy in the air to replenish her body. This ruin was full of oddities. This kind of cloud and mist lingered around it, and the feeling of being unable to see clearly was really uncomfortable. Unfortunately, she was unable to decipher it at the moment. Her greatest reliance was this stone. She could only hope that it would help her leave this place. Chapter 49:17. Endless treasures. No matter what you like, it will belong to you. Come to me. As long as you have these treasures, your future will be bright. Believe me, there will be everything you need here. A summoning voice seemed to come from the bottom of Bailey Hongzhuang's heart. Endless treasures appeared in front of her, dazzling with golden light. The greed and desire of a person would spread to the maximum. All of the greed would explode under this summoning. It was as if as long as she took this step, she would be able to obtain everything she wanted. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips unconsciously overflowed with a trace of a smile. Everything that she dreamed of getting seemed to be within her reach. However, just as she was about to take a step, she felt that something was wrong. It was because of this uncertainty that she did not take the first step. It was this short moment of hesitation that caused a cooling power to surge into her mind, causing her confused eyes to shine again. After coming to her senses, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with horror. This kind of summoning power was really too terrifying. Anyone who was not firm in their heart would definitely be attracted by this summoning. Once they were attracted, the consequences would naturally be extremely terrifying. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes widened. Her beautiful face was filled with indescribable astonishment and horror. This place was too terrifying. Only then did she realize that many of the cultivators around her were at a loss. Some of them were even smiling strangely with excitement. She immediately looked at Di Beichen, only to find that Di Beichen was frowning. There was a bloodstain on his palm. It was obvious that he was struggling with all his might. Beichin. Beichin. Bailey Hongzhuang called out and shook Di Beichin's shoulder. After a moment, Di Beichin opened his eyes and woke up from his nightmare. Wife. Di Beichin looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him, his deep and charming eyes rippling with shock and terror. Beichin, it's great that you're awake. Bailey Hongzhuang heaved a sigh of relief. This place is too scary. Everyone seems to be immersed in the excitement. Di Beichin nodded slightly. The power of bewitchment is too strong. Normal people would not be able to resist it. What happened to your hand? Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes were filled with concern. Although they were almost bewitched before, as long as they were not bewitched and left, external forces would not harm them. I always felt that this place was very strange, so I cut my hand before I started cultivating. The pain would make me more awake. Fortunately, I did so. I'm afraid that my reaction right now would be the same as most people's. Di Beichin furrowed his beautiful eyebrows, and his beautiful face was full of dignified worry. This was the first time he had encountered such a method. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang understood. She sighed inwardly. Fortunately, Beichin had foresight. At the same time, they noticed that Chen Feng, Di Xiaofeng, Mo Yunjue, Lin Taxing, Nangong Yuqing, and the others were still awake. However, everyone's faces were very pale. It was not because of their injuries but because this scene made them feel very scared. What the hell is this place? Damn it! Nangong Yuqing cursed. His originally unsightly face looked even uglier under his anger. Chapter 49:18. A trace of understanding appeared on Di Xiaofeng's handsome face. Previously, no one could figure out how those cultivators disappeared without a trace. However, after the situation just now, he understood. These cultivators were willingly lured away. In addition, there was fog all around, so no one noticed them at all. As soon as he said this, everyone nodded. This was indeed the most likely possibility. Don't worry about that for now. The most important thing is to wake everyone up. Di Beichin's expression was extremely solemn. There seemed to be no external danger here, but the most terrifying thing was the attack on one's soul. Once one's soul fell, everything would be useless. The next moment, everyone no longer hesitated and began to wake up the people around them. There was not much time left for them. According to the situation in the main hall, if they were bewitched too deeply, they would not be able to wake them up even if they wanted to. Chanshan, wake up. Lin Taxing hurriedly shook Lin Chanshan. Lin Chanshan was still in a state of excitement, and the smile on her face had yet to fade. Chanshan, wake up. I am Taxing. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were not idle either. They were all desperately trying to wake everyone up. At this moment, everyone could only find a way to leave this terrifying place if they were united. The bewitched cultivators woke up under the shaking of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. When they understood what had happened, they could not help but feel a lingering fear. If someone had not woken them up, what would have happened to them now? After Xiao Sudong woke up, he hurriedly looked at the cultivators 5 meters away. At this moment, the figures of those cultivators were nowhere to be seen. They are all gone. Xiao Sudong cried out in alarm. At this moment, Jun Qinbin's figure appeared beside the team. His face was completely filled with an expression as if he had seen a ghost. We can't take those treasures. Seeing that Jun Qinbin had not disappeared, everyone was somewhat astonished. According to their judgment, Jun Qinbin should not be alive. Jun Qinbin, what happened earlier? What did you see? Chen Feng asked. Even though Jun Qinbin was very dissatisfied with Chen Feng, he couldn't care less at this moment. He only said in a panic, Ghost, there must be a ghost here. Don't panic. Tell us in detail what you saw. Xiao Sudong walked to Jun Qinbin's side and pulled his arm. Jun Qinbin nodded. After calming down a little, he said, They all had strange smiles on their faces and then walked in the opposite direction. No matter how I called out to them, they didn't respond at all. It was as if they were immersed in their own world and couldn't hear me at all. Jun Qinbin panted heavily, as if he still had lingering fears about what had happened before. Furthermore, they are all holding treasures in their hands. Their eyes are bloodshot as they stare at the treasures. I saw that the treasure was emitting a demonic blood-red light. Didn't you keep some treasures as well? Why is he fine? Nangong Yuqing looked at Jun Qinbin doubtfully. Since the others had disappeared, it was strange that Jun Qinbin was still alive. I didn't cultivate it before, Jun Qinbin said slowly, feeling a lingering fear. Chapter 49:19. That was because he had chosen to place the treasure not far away from him. Moreover, he did not start cultivating immediately. Instead, he was still unconvinced by Chen Feng's words. Hence he had been waiting. He was hoping to find evidence to prove that all this had nothing to do with the treasure. As long as he could find evidence, he would be able to reason with Chen Feng and vent his anger. However, he had never expected to see such a scene. After this scene, he immediately understood that Di Beichen's previous judgment was correct. Immediately, he did not dare to delay any longer. He left the treasure and approached Di Beichen's group. After hearing everything Jun Qinbin said, everyone looked at each other in dismay, feeling a chill run down their spines. In that case, regardless of whether the treasure here is useful or not, as long as we cultivate, there is a high possibility that we will be bewitched. This ruin is deliberately using some methods to exhaust the elemental energy in our bodies, forcing us to sit down and cultivate to recover. This method is used to bewitch our minds. What should we do? If we don't cultivate like this, we won't be able to resist if we encounter danger. Panic and nervousness appeared on everyone's faces. An indescribable sense of panic started spreading in their hearts. All these situations made them feel extremely powerless. For a moment, everyone's gaze shifted to Di Beichen's group. These people were undoubtedly their life-saving straw. That was because they had all been bewitched, yet Di Beichen's group was still able to maintain their consciousness. As long as the other party was willing to wake them up, they would still have hope of surviving. Everyone, don't panic. Although this place is bizarre, as long as we can resist this bewitching power, there won't be any other dangers. As long as we work together, I believe we will definitely be able to walk out of this ruin. Di Beichen's gentle and magnetic voice sounded. Currently, the most taboo thing was to panic. The moment they panicked, their subsequent actions would only make more mistakes. Di Beichen is right. Now that we have a clear understanding of the situation, as long as no other tricks are used, we will be able to resist, Qin Feng said. Di Beichen, Qin Feng, we will follow you guys. We will do whatever you say. No matter what, we must find a way to leave this place. After the first cultivator expressed his stance, the rest of the cultivators followed suit. That's right, we believe you. I have to leave. I don't want to die here. After everyone recovered their origin energy, they once again began to walk out. While they were walking, the atmosphere of the entire group was very stifling. Not for any other reason but because in this short period of time, the number of people in the group had shrunk by quite a bit. No one knew how many people would be able to leave the ruins alive. Most importantly, many of the cultivators' relatives had perished in the ruins. It would be strange if they were in a good mood. Fortunately, the cultivators of the Di family and the Lin family were still alive. Everyone had their own selfish motives. Even though everyone had tried their best to wake everyone up, the first people they woke up were their own teammates. Although the Di family and the Lin family had more practitioners than the other families, the number of people who were awake was also more than the other families. That was why they were able to wake up before they were completely possessed. Chapter 49:20. Hearing this, everyone's mood was still low, but at least they felt better. Compared to other painful ways of dying, dying in this ruin was indeed not painful. Because even at the moment of death they probably still hadn't woken up from their happiness. Previously, I thought that this immortal cloud secret territory was full of opportunities. Now, it seems that this place is also extremely dangerous. Di Xiaofeng's expression was solemn and complicated. This place is really too strange. I've never heard anyone mention it before. If you've heard of it, we wouldn't have been so unprepared. Lin Taxing sighed. This ruin had indeed caused him a deep setback. I'm afraid that all the cultivators who came here before have already disappeared. Mo Yunjue's voice suddenly sounded. His eyes were deep. If Hong Zhuang didn't have that stone, none of us would have been able to leave the main hall. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's hearts thumped. Indeed, without that stone, no one would have been able to leave. Since this was the case for them, most likely the cultivators who came here before were the same. Could it be that all the cultivators who came here before were annihilated? Lin Qianshan widened her eyes, overwhelmed with shock. Without Hong Zhuang's reminder, even Qin Feng wouldn't have been able to leave. What do you think? Di Xiaofeng said. Everyone did not say anything more, but in their hearts they already understood everything. This was their fortune. Because Bailey Hong Zhuang was also here. Otherwise, they would have been completely annihilated and no one would even know where they died. We have to be careful in the future. Who knows, there might be ambushes everywhere in the Immortal Cloud secret territory. Since such a place has appeared, there might be even more strange things in other places, Di Xiaofeng reminded everyone. After all the cultivators gave up on the treasures in the ruin, everyone discovered that there were no more cultivators who inexplicably disappeared in the process of walking. Regarding this, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. This was perhaps the only consolation that could be given to them so far. Under such efforts, everyone finally saw the entrance to the ruin. The entrance? That's the entrance to the ruin. After walking for so long, we're finally out. I want to leave this terrifying place as soon as possible. I don't want to stay here anymore. A look of joy appeared on everyone's faces. Every second they stayed here, the more they felt like their hearts were about to collapse. Only at this moment did they completely ignite their hope. Almost immediately, everyone rushed outside without any hesitation. However, just as they were about to step out of the entrance, they found an invisible force blocking them. Instantly, the smiles on everyone's faces froze and were replaced with nervousness and panic. How can this be? Why can't we leave? Could it be that this relic wants to keep all of us here? What should we do? I don't want to die here. Under this extreme fear, many cultivators began to lose control of their emotions and became hysterical. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other, their moods extremely complicated. I'm afraid we'll have to put in some effort to get out. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were as calm as an ancient well. Her voice was calm, and she didn't lose control of her emotions like many people. Chapter 49-21. The more dangerous it was, the calmer they had to be. Only in this way could they think of a way out in the midst of a crisis. Di Beichen nodded. Since we were able to enter, we will definitely be able to find a way out. However, we have to think carefully about how we can get out. Mo Yunjue and the rest fell into deep thought as they tried to think of a way out. At the same time, the other cultivators had already begun trying to use their strength to break through this layer of restriction. This time, everyone used all their strength. The desire to live swelled in their hearts. No one was willing to stay here any longer. Bailey Hongzhuang only glanced at them and did not pay too much attention to it. She understood that this method would not work at all. Just like how they could not enter with brute force earlier, they could not leave with brute force now. Previously, when we entered, we waited. However, if we leave now, it's obviously useless to wait. Bailey Hongzhuang tapped her chin with her slender fingers. Her almond-shaped eyes flashed with a puzzled light. Master, is the stone still reacting? Baisher could not help but ask. As a contracted beast, it was not as affected as a human. Even though it had coveted it previously, it had quickly calmed down. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Apart from keeping me awake when I was bewitched, the stone did not have any other reaction. Based on the current situation, the most obvious manifestation of this ruin is greed. Di Beichen's thoughtful voice slowly rang out. As long as we don't covet anything here, it won't pose any danger to us. Perhaps, we need to get rid of this before we can leave. I think so too. Mo Yunjue nodded. We need to get rid of the greed in our hearts before we can leave this place. Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. This seemed to be the most feasible method. If that's the case, we can only rely on ourselves to get out. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest looked at each other and stopped hesitating. Since they could only rely on themselves, there was no point in talking about anything else. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and recalled everything that had happened in the ruin. Immediately after, the bewitching voice rang in her mind again, swaying her heart. Come, all the precious treasures you want are here. I can give you everything you want. Stop struggling as long as you come with me. However, no matter how bewitching this voice was, Bailey Hongzhuang's heart was extremely firm. No matter how many treasures you have, I won't be moved. Everything I want, I will obtain through my own efforts. I don't need your help. None of this is attractive to me. You can keep your treasures for yourself. A bright light flashed in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes. Then, Bailey Hongzhuang stood up without hesitation and walked towards the door. Just as Nangong Yuqing and the others were thinking about how to break this layer of restriction, they saw Bailey Hongzhuang directly approaching the restriction. Seeing this, Nangong Yuqing couldn't help but roll his eyes. Does she want to go out directly? With the restriction here, how can she go out? Just as he was about to laugh at Bailey Hongzhuang for bumping into the restriction, he found that Bailey Hongzhuang had actually passed through the restriction and walked out of the ruin. Chapter 49-22. Damn. How did she get out? Nangong Yuqing stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang as she walked out of the monument and bathed in the sun. Only then did he react. In the next moment he walked out of the ruins without hesitation. However, the restriction was still there, preventing him from moving forward. It wasn't just Nangong Yuqing, the other cultivators had the same reaction. However, when they found that they still couldn't get out, they were completely dumbfounded. Why can she get out but we can't? Nangong Yuqing frowned. This was too strange. However, as soon as Bailey Hongzhuang walked out, Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue also walked out. Seeing their actions, Nangong Yuqing stood to the side and watched quietly. He didn't believe that the two of them would be able to get out. However, reality was cruel. This was because Di Beichen and Mo Yunjue also walked out without any hindrance. How could this be? Nangong Yuqing's eyes widened as he stretched out his hand. The restriction was clearly there. The restriction is clearly here, so why didn't it stop them? Xiao Sudong also had a suspicious look on his face. This was a little too strange. They must have found a way out, Jun Qinbin said. For a moment, everyone's envious eyes fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. Their biggest wish was to leave this terrifying and strange ruin. As long as they could leave, it meant that they would be safe. Even if they stayed here for a second longer, they would be in danger for a second longer. How did you get out? Everyone hurriedly asked. This was their only hope. Once Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left, it wouldn't be easy for them to get out. Standing under the sun again, the warm feeling dispelled the cold from staying in the monument, and Bailey Hongzhuang's lips finally burst into a smile. It seems that our previous judgment was right. This is the only way to get out of the ruins. A smile appeared in Di Beichen's eyes. No matter what, we're finally out. Mo Yunjue's face also revealed a relaxed expression. It had to be said that when he was inside, his mood was indeed extremely depressed. It was only after he came out that he felt much better. Then the three of them turned around and prepared to remind everyone how to get out. However, as soon as they turned around, they realized that the door in their line of sight had actually closed, and they could no longer see any other cultivators. What's going on? A trace of astonishment appeared on Bailey Hongzhuang's delicate face. She looked at the closed door doubtfully. When she came out, it clearly wasn't like this. It's probably because the owner of this ruin doesn't want us to warn others, so he did it on purpose. Mo Yunjue's eyes darkened. The original intention of the owner of this ruin was to keep all of us there. Our departure must have made him very unhappy. If we can't warn everyone, will they know the way out? Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but worry. Although they had previously reminded everyone of this idea, they didn't know if everyone could understand it. If they couldn't, then they would be trapped in there forever with no way out. Chapter 49-23. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang pondered for a moment before nodding her head. Only then did the worry on her face dissipate somewhat. Indeed, everyone had been shocked by what had happened earlier. That was why they were unable to recover from their shock for the time being. Once they thought about it carefully, they would be able to understand everything and find a way to solve this problem. Nangong Yuqing and the others were standing inside, calling out to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. However, they found that the three of them did not respond at all. At first, they were extremely angry, but when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang looking inside and not seeing them at all, they suddenly understood. Are they unable to see us? Judging from Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction, that seems to be the case. Could it be that we can no longer warn the people inside after we leave? What should we do? Everyone panicked. Everyone wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, but they had no idea how to do so. Right at this moment, Qin Feng suddenly stood up. Looking at everyone who was as anxious as ants on a hot pan, he said, "What's the point of you being anxious here? As long as you can get rid of your inner demons, you will be able to leave." The next moment, Qin Feng stepped out of the door as well. Unsurprisingly, Qin Feng walked out of the ruin without any hindrance. Seeing Qin Feng following closely behind them, the eyes of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two lit up. Although their previous understanding of Qin Feng had been based on hearsay, from what they had seen so far, Qin Feng was indeed an outstanding individual. Do they know how to get out? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. I did warn them. As for whether they can get rid of their inner demons, that will depend on themselves, Qin Feng said with an indifferent expression. Qin Feng had an indifferent expression as his lips curled up into a smile. I owe you a favor for what happened this time. In the future, if you need my help, feel free to ask. You don't have to be so concerned. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. She had only warned Qin Feng. If Chen Feng had not realized the problem himself, he would not have walked out just because of her warning. Hearing this, Chen Feng waved his hand. Perhaps this is nothing to you. However, for me your reminder saved my life. Bailey Hongzhuang did not say anything else when she saw that Chen Feng had already confirmed everything. Obviously, the other party had his own insistence, so it was meaningless for her to say anything more. Di Beichen and Mo Yunjua's gazes landed on Chen Feng. One had to admit that Chen Feng's persistence had caused them to have an even higher opinion of him. When the cultivators in the Land of Legacy saw that Chen Feng had left as well, their hearts calmed down. They remembered what Chen Feng had said before leaving. If they wanted to leave this place, they had to get rid of their inner demons. Clearly, the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were able to leave was because they had broken through the demonic barrier. Di Xiaofeng and the others had heard the conversation between Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, so they naturally understood the solution. However, knowing was one thing, and being able to break through the inner demons was another. The only thing they could do was to stay firm in their beliefs and not be bewitched by that voice. Once they were bewitched, death would be waiting for them. Fortunately, most of the cultivators were also people with firm wills. Moreover, after experiencing what had happened previously, they understood that this so-called bewitching voice was a demon-like existence. Chapter 49-24. After Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 left the ruins, they stood outside and waited. It was not easy for them to reunite with their family's cultivators here. Naturally, they could not leave everyone behind and act separately. Even though Chen Feng was a loner, he had no intention of leaving this place. As the eldest senior brother of the Great Devil sect, he naturally had the responsibility to take care of the other disciples. For a time, the 4 of them sat at the door and rested, waiting for the other cultivators to come out. Bailey Hongzhuang closed her eyes and cultivated. Although the situation in the ruins was extremely strange, it seemed that there were many gains after entering, but in the end, everything was given up. However, cultivating the power of the light attribute here was undoubtedly very helpful. Not long after, the figures of Di Xiaofeng and the others also appeared outside the ruins. "Big brother, you're out." Di Beichen's eyes were filled with a faint smile, and his expression was somewhat relaxed. Di Xiaofeng nodded slightly. "You have already told us the method to come out. If we still can't come out, what will happen? Although the others will spend more effort, I think they will all come out later. Don't worry." Lin Taxing also spoke out. If it was during normal times, it would be very difficult to break through this demonic barrier by relying on our own strength. However, after experiencing the current situation, everyone's resistance has increased. Judging from the performance of this ruin, the owner of this ruin should be of the light attribute. I didn't expect him to do such a thing. It's really lamentable. Di Xiaofeng sighed. If he had not personally experienced it, he would have found it hard to believe such a thing. In the past, I don't know how many cultivators have fallen here. Just thinking about the terrifying number makes my hair stand on end. A tribute does not represent human nature. Even if the owner of the ruin is of the light attribute, it does not mean that he is a righteous person. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was indifferent. She looked at this kind of thing very lightly. Just like how she and Beichen were both dark attribute cultivators, they did not think that this attribute represented darkness. Lin Taxing nodded slightly. "After this incident, we all understand. I think that this ruin should really be experienced by the people of the Holy Light Assembly. Presumably, their thoughts will change a lot." "Actually, I think so too." Lin Qianqian frowned. Although the light attribute is indeed a very powerful attribute, it's still too high and mighty. Any cultivator who wasn't of the light attribute would have some complaints about this. However, even if they had objections, it was useless. I think this situation will change in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with determination. She believed that the darkness attribute would be accepted by everyone once again. Di Beichen stared at Bailey Hongzhuang. They looked at each other and smiled. This was their common goal. White Lion also came out very quickly. As a contracted beast, it would not be too seriously bewitched. Moreover, as a beast king, its will was naturally extremely firm. After 3 days of waiting, all the practitioners of the Di family and the Lin family finally gathered together. "Since everyone is out, let's set off." A smile appeared on Di Xiaofeng's face again. "This place is so strange, I think no one wants to stay here any longer." As soon as he said this, everyone nodded in agreement. Chapter 49-25. Daiheoan looked at Di Baichen and Bailey Hongzhuang in amazement. Baichen, I didn't expect you to be so powerful. If it weren't for you this time, I'm afraid we really wouldn't have survived. The cultivators of the two families also nodded and looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with eyes full of admiration and gratitude. Young master, you are really too powerful. Everyone sighed. The doubts they had about Di Baichen and Lin Mingya had long disappeared. At this moment they were really convinced. Since Di Baichen came back, although the family head didn't say it openly, they had already regarded Di Baichen as the young master. After all, Di Xiaofeng was going to inherit the Lin family. This had been confirmed in the early years. Even in these years, because Di Baichen hadn't appeared, everyone just thought that they would find another young master from the other children. Now they obviously didn't have to worry about this matter. Di Baichen was also very calm about the way everyone addressed him. He had already accepted this matter. All of this is thanks to Hongzhuang. Di Baichen chuckled. If Hongzhuang hadn't reminded me, I'm afraid I would have been bewitched. Young madam is really powerful. Yes, young madam was the first person to find out that there was a problem. Young master, young madam, no matter what you say in the future, I won't doubt it anymore. You guys are simply too amazing. I'll just follow your instructions. Previously, when Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen asked the other children to leave, many people were unwilling to give up. Now that they thought about it, everyone realized the gap between the two sides. As the voice of this cultivator fell, the other cultivators also expressed their opinions. In the future we will definitely follow young master and young madam's lead. Seeing everyone's reaction, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen also laughed. They didn't expect that after this incident, their rallying power would increase by a lot. However, this was obviously a good thing for them. Why do you think the owner of the ruins wants so many treasures? Di Xiaofeng furrowed his brows. He couldn't figure it out. Furthermore, did he build this relic just to take the lives of other cultivators? If that's really the case, then he's too vicious. Lin Taxing and the others were also puzzled. This was really puzzling. At the very least, none of the ruins they knew about before were like this. Even if there were risks in entering the ruins, it was a test set by the owner of the ruins to select a suitable successor. Unlike this ruin, it was purely for the sake of taking lives. The owner of this ruin might be a ghost cultivator. Bailey Hongzhuang pondered and said. As the voice of Bailey Hongzhuang fell, everyone present was stunned, and a trace of shock flashed in their eyes. Ghost cultivator? Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. A ghost cultivator is actually a cultivator whose soul hasn't dissipated after their death. This situation is somewhat similar to the soul that was attached to Jun Lingshuan's body. However, ghost cultivators are usually people with deep resentment. They are ruthless and have sinister means. If they can't find a suitable place to attach themselves to and other opportunities to strengthen their soul power, then they are very likely to become ghost cultivators. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.